Starting live video. Welcome to Parenting with Vanessa Kahlon. So this week there's been a couple of topics that keep coming up, and that's even with siblings that I've been working with. Oh, look, now I can tag people. You do it afterwards. Hold on, I'm getting right to it where I needed to. My topic is, now I just got distracted, not good. Here we're going into it now. All right, got my people. All right, done, finished. Okay, here we go. So So this week I've noticed that there are some topics of conversation that keeps coming up that my child does not listen. And what I'm seeing is that there is a consistency issue. So if you're not consistent in following through, then they're not gonna listen to you. For example, you tell your child to come here, like 5 times, they're just gonna ignore you. And then you explode, and then you wonder, wow, my child just only comes to me when I explode and I'm yelling, which is not what we want to do, right? So I have a couple of rules on that one. So what I would do is you would only ask the child 2 times, and then the 3rd time actually bring them to you. And you might give them a choice. Do you want me to help you come, or can you do it yourself? Once again, they feel like they're in control, which is what we all want, right? Nobody wants to be told what to do, even a child. I have problems with that still to this day. And that is something that I just don't like. So a couple tips to work with me. What do you think about this idea versus you should do this? See the difference in communication that we're looking at, especially with children when you want to give them choices and also you want them to listen to you. And what happened was the other day I was working with 2 siblings, and this little boy was getting super upset because the little girl, his sister, was across the room and he's telling her something. And he's getting really angry that like she's not listening. But if you look at her body language, her head is down, she's playing, she's doing something. And I'm like, wait a minute. If you actually paid attention to see what was going on with the nonverbal communication, you would see that she's not hearing you. And here you have this little boy escalating, getting super upset, and starts screaming, and I'm just going, wait a minute, let's look at the body language, take a step back, teach the child, what do you see, right? Do you see her actually paying attention? Do you see her doing something else? And she cannot focus. So that is one of the things that I think is important to understand, that if you're in the kitchen cooking and your kid's playing Legos in the other room, and they're engulfed in something, they're not gonna hear you anyways. Right? So it's really important to make sure that you have eye contact with your child when you're asking them to do something, to make sure they hear you. You also want to give them time to process. So you're not going to just say, come here, and then come here, come here, come here over and over again, which a lot of times, you do, which is normal. But give yourself, I would say, count to 3 after you say your first come here. 1, 2, 3. Give the child time to process. Nobody wants to be bombarded with stuff. And especially when you have a child that has some sensory issues or can be a little anxious, next thing you know, they are from 0 to 60 really fast for nothing, when they just need time to process. And if they are doing something, they could be in so much, what is the word I'm looking for? Just so hyper-focused on their activity that they're not listening anyways. So you might have to say, you know what, I'm gonna count to 3, and there's my dog, she doesn't listen to me either. So I'll just let you know, I'm not great with animals. I'm good with kids, not animals so much, because she just knows how to look at me, and then I say, okay, you can have that. And so now I have a dog that doesn't listen to me. But going back to the child playing Legos, you want to be able to say, okay, I'm going to count to 3, and then I'm going to ask you to do something, and then prep them beforehand and make sure that they have a transition time so that the behavior doesn't skyrocket. Another thing is, I'm serious about that. I always tell parents this: you want to ask twice. The 3rd time, you need to go over and help them. Because if you keep asking your kid over and over and over again the same thing, they're just learning they don't have to listen to you. And if you're not following through, they don't have to listen to you. So next thing you know, you're escalating the whole situation. It's going up because they're not listening to you. And don't get me wrong, I do that too. I have kids that don't like to listen sometimes. And it happens, especially in the school, when you're like, come on, you have a whole class and you're trying to manage it. It's very difficult. But being able to just say, okay, you know what? Everything stops right now. We're just going to calm down, take a moment and listen. That's the stuff that you need to do and practice. Practice taking a break. Practice saying, okay, I'm going to only ask twice. Look and see, is your child actually doing something else that's more fun than making coming to the dinner table, right? These are things to think about, because you don't want to be screaming across the room. You want to make sure you have eye contact. You want to make sure there's follow through. And if you say, I would just say, I'm noticing you're not listening. Do you want help? Want me to help you? Or would you like to do it yourself? So when you're cleaning up your toys, You need to clean up, and your child's like, I'm refusing to do so. Once again, twice. The third time you go, I'm going to help you do that. These are the things that it's going to really help your child understand that you are consistent. There's one thing about me that is I am super consistent. My kids know it. I will follow through on everything. And sometimes I make mistakes. And it was really cute. A couple of weeks ago, one of my kids came up to me. He's like, I just don't think that was really fair, your decision. And the fact that he came up to me and in a grown-up way and said, we need to have a meeting, I'm going to value that. And I said, you know what, you're right. I made a mistake. So it's important to understand that you make mistakes too when you're working or when you're dealing with your child, because we all do. And it's important to be able to say, acknowledge it and move on. You just always have to move on from it. But to get your kid to listen, it's really coming down to, once again, you ask twice, 2 times. The third time you're going to help them, but you give them choices. So then they feel they're in control of the situation, but you're in control because you're saying, okay, do you want to play 5 minutes versus 3 minutes before dinner time versus saying, come to dinner? There's a big difference. Some kids need that transition time. And if they say, okay, in 3 minutes, then put the timer on. Or you have that child that's going to say, no, I want 4 minutes. I go, nope, it's 5 or 3. That's it. You're not going to if you're arguing with a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 7-year-old, you've already lost the battle. There's no point in this. But once again, the consistency piece is key when you are working with children that sometimes like to do what they want to do and not listen. So how do we go back and teach that? And another thing is to be aware, if you are changing these rules and you're like, okay, I'm going to ask twice and I'm going to help, I'm going to give choices, the behavior is going to escalate. It's going to get worse before it gets better because they're like, I don't want to listen to you and let's see how far we take it. Because normally you're going to ask me 20 times, I'm still not going to do it. Or you're going to not follow through. And then if you ask me to clean up and I don't listen, I'm just going to clean up for you. Once again, it's taking that time to be consistent, follow through, give them time to process, and give them choices. The more choices you give them, the more they feel like they have control of the situation that they're in. And by the way, we all want to have some control. Nobody wants you to come up and say, it's time for dinner. Let's go. You know, it's very different to say, okay, we have 2 more minutes and then, or do you want to eat in 3 minutes? What is it? They feel like they have a voice, they're being heard. And then the transition, once again, transitions are extremely difficult for a lot of kids to go from like an activity that they really want to do, that's very preferred versus a non-preferred. So when you're looking at, I'm not going to give a kid that they really, you're not going to give dessert before dinner, right? We just all know that. But you got to start thinking in those terms, in different ways, like what they're playing with. They might like a certain activity more than another one. So if you know that there's something hard coming up, I'm not going to give them a highly preferred activity to do to transition to something that they don't want to do. You'd want to have that highly preferred activity after. So that's another thing. But once again, being consistent and making sure that they have your attention and they're not just ignoring you, because sometimes kids really are just playing with it. They don't hear you. And so by the time that you're asking the 5th time, they've only probably heard that the first time on your 5th call, right? Because it got louder. And so once they get louder, they're like, oh, that's when I respond. Another thing is the name. When you're always saying their name over and over again, sometimes you teach the child that they don't always have to listen. So try to only use their name when it's like I really need it, or coming over and like really just giving a touch on the shoulder and asking them to do something, because that right there alone, just touch, will bring everything a lot, will just decrease and help them listen to you. Just helps them refocus and reset by just like a nice little tap on the shoulder. Really simple things, guys. And then you can yell at me later when like it explodes and you're just like, what just happened? If you do that, email me and I'll help you with that one. But I just think really coming down to being consistent, ask twice, the third time, you're going to give them a choice on what they want to do. And then along with looking at the follow through and just making sure you have eye contact and you're on their level and giving them the choices. Those things alone will make your life a lot easier. And I'm sure everyone right now is ready for all the kids to go back to school. And because it's been a couple 2 weeks with Christmas and all the gifts and everything else. So the anxiety kind of goes up and everyone's, off the schedule. So here's some just tips to get them back and ready to go back to school and getting them listening. Cause I'm sure we're going to be going through this on Monday when let's see how many times I have to ask to do something. But once again, if I just follow the rules 2 times, the third time I'm going to help you, that the kids know that we're all on the same page. And by like Wednesday, we should be back on track. Thank you again. You're listening to Parenting with Vanessa Kahlon. I hope these tips help you. Thanks.